and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. The United States says it is ready to review key sanctions against Iran if it comes into compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal. Talking to reporters, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Washington would only consider lifting curbs that are related to the nuclear issue. This comes a day ahead of the Europe-led indirect talks aimed at salvaging the nuclear accord. Jordan's Prince HAMZA has pledged allegiance to King Abdullah bin Hussein after mediation by the royal family. In a letter, the prince placed himself at the monarch's disposal and vowed to remain committed to the country's constitution. This comes 2 days after he was placed under house arrest after being accused of involving in an attempted coup. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is arriving in Pakistan today on a 2-day official visit. Foreign Office says Lavrov will discuss bilateral ties and regional issues, including the Afghan peace process with Pakistani leadership. This would be the first visit of a Russian Foreign Minister to Pakistan since 2012. North Korea says it will not join the Tokyo Olympics this year due to coronavirus concerns. Meanwhile, India has reported nearly 97,000 new infections and 446 deaths in the last 24 hours. In Pakistan, over 100 people lost their lives to the virus and nearly 4,000 tested positive overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.85 million lives and infected over 131 million others. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, the news in detail. The United States says it is ready to discuss sanctions relief with Iran if it comes into compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal. This comes a day ahead of the Europe-led indirect talks that are aimed at salvaging the nuclear accord. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Washington will only consider lifting curbs that are related to the nuclear issue. Talking to reporters, Price said the U.S. will not entertain any unilateral concessions to induce Iran to a better place. He said the aim of the talks in Vienna is to set the stage for a mutual return to compliance.
We don't underestimate the scale of the challenges ahead. These are early days. We don't anticipate an early or immediate breakthrough, as these discussions we fully expect will be difficult. But we do believe that these discussions with our partners, and in turn our partners with Iran, is a healthy step forward.
Jordan's Prince HAMZA has pledged allegiance to King Abdullah bin Hussein after mediation by the royal family. This comes 2 days after he was placed under house arrest after being accused of involving in an attempted coup. In a letter, the prince placed himself at the monarch's disposal and vowed to remain committed to the constitution. He said the interests of the homeland must remain above every consideration, and the king's efforts to protect Jordan and its national interest must be supported. The former high denies the allegations of conspiracy. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is arriving in Pakistan today on a 2-day official visit. Islamabad says during his stay, Lavrov will call on Prime Minister Imran Khan and have interaction with other dignitaries. The Foreign Office said Lavrov will hold delegation-level meetings with his Pakistani counterpart Shah Mahmood Qureshi. It said the two will exchange views on bilateral cooperation, global and regional issues, including the Afghan peace process. This would be the first visit of a Russian foreign minister to Pakistan since 2012. Pakistan has recorded another 103 COVID-19 deaths in the past 24 hours, the highest fatality since December. The country's death toll is now approaching 15,000. The Health Ministry reported nearly 4,000 new infections overnight. Currently, the number of confirmed cases has topped 696,000, with over 618,000 recoveries. Pakistan's positivity ratio stands at 8.47%. There are more than 63,000 active cases across the country. Meanwhile, the National Command Operations Center will review the reopening of educational institutions today. The NCOC said it will also review Ramadan SOPs. India has reported nearly 97,000 COVID-19 cases and 446 deaths in the last 24 hours. Many Indian states have asked Prime Minister Narendra Modi to widen the vaccination drive following a surge in infections. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.85 million lives and infected 131 million others. Details in the following report.
Nations' fight against the COVID-19 pandemic goes on with controversies around the vaccines. Mexico's president says he will not be taking the COVID-19 vaccine, arguing that he still has sufficient levels of antibodies in his system following his bout with the virus earlier this year. Meanwhile, a U.S. judge has dismissed a lawsuit accusing the World Health Organization of gross negligence in responding to the pandemic. Washington has named former U.S. Aid Administrator Gail Smith as the coordinator for global COVID-19 response. Smith said the U.S. would assume global leadership to respond to present and future health crises.
Our challenges now are two. First, to shorten the lifespan of a borderless pandemic that is destroying lives and livelihoods all over the world. And the second is to ensure that we can prevent, detect, and respond to those future global health threats we know are coming.
New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says quarantine-free travel with Australia will start on April 19th. Meanwhile, Australia said it has not yet received more than 3 million AstraZeneca doses amid export curbs by the European Union. Over in Europe, German authorities warned that the country needs a bridge lockdown. This could include further restrictions until the vaccine rollout is at a later stage. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has given a green light for all businesses to reopen across the country from next Monday.
And the net result of your efforts, and of course with the vaccine rollout, is that I can today confirm that from Monday the 12th of April we will move to step 2 of our roadmap. Reopening shops, gyms, zoos, holiday campsites, personal care services like hairdressers, and of course beer gardens and outdoor hospitality of all kinds.
Meanwhile, in Bangladesh, at least 3 people are in critical condition after being shot by police during a protest over COVID-19 restrictions.
Palestinian group Hamas says citizens in occupied East Jerusalem must be allowed to cast ballots in upcoming elections. In a statement, the group's political bureau member called it a constant and uncompromised position. Izzat al-Rishq said the Palestinian people will use all their powers and means to pressure Israel to allow elections in Jerusalem. But the Israeli government has so far made no response to requests to allow Palestinian citizens of East Jerusalem to cast votes. Palestine is set to hold legislative elections on the 22nd of May and presidential poll on the 31st of July. Israel's president is set to announce a candidate to try to form a government after consultations with political parties. The talks left Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the apparent favorite with the most endorsements. However, President Reuven Rivlin has wide discretion under the law in making his choice. Earlier, the president said ethical considerations could come into play, an apparent reference to the 3 corruption cases against Netanyahu. Israel's election on 23rd of March, its 4th in 2 years, ended without any candidate winning a parliamentary majority. The world powers have voiced their support for Ukraine in border conflict with Russia. The US, European Union and Britain in separate statements called out Moscow for its military buildup along its eastern border. The US State Department has asked Russia to explain the recent provocations. Spokesperson Ned Price said Washington stands by Ukraine in the face of this intimidation and aggression. The UK Prime Minister's office said Boris Johnson has significant concerns about Russian activity in Crimea. The British Premier also reaffirmed his unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty in a phone call with President Volodymyr Zelensky. Earlier, EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell said he was following the issue with severe concern. In Russia, jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny has been moved to a sick ward with symptoms of a respiratory illness. Navalny has also been tested for coronavirus after he said he had contracted a high fever and cough. In a social media post, he claimed a third person out of 15 in his unit had been hospitalized with tuberculosis. Navalny has accused prison authorities of depriving him of sleep and refusing to give him proper medical care. He has been on a hunger strike, and his team said he had already lost 8 kilograms even before the strike. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a law that can keep him in office in the Kremlin until 2036. This follows changes to the constitution last year that can allow Putin to potentially remain in power until the age of 83. The government says the legislation allows Putin to run for 2 more 6-year terms once his current stint ends in 2024. He is currently serving his 2nd consecutive term as president and his 4th in total. The law limits any future president to terms in office but resets his term count. It was passed in the lower and upper houses of parliament last month. The United States says it is gravely concerned about violence in Ethiopia's restive Tigray region. A State Department spokesperson said Washington is looking into reports of massacres in the region. At a press briefing, Ned Price welcomed statements that Eritrean troops will withdraw from Tigray. He added that a withdrawal will be an important step forward in de-escalation in the region. Ethiopia ended a security operation in Tigray in November following an armed attack by outlawed Tigray People's Liberation Front. But sporadic fighting continues as thousands were internally displaced, with more than 60,000 fleeing to Sudan. Turkey has detained 10 retired admirals for signing a statement supporting an 85-year-old maritime accord. The pact is aimed at demilitarizing the Black Sea by setting strict rules on the passage through 2 straits leading to the Mediterranean. In a statement, President Tayyip Erdogan said the letter by admirals went beyond freedom of expression and implied a coup. He said in a country whose past is filled with coups, another attempt by a group of retired admirals can never be accepted. Earlier in their letter, 104 retired admirals said the existing treaty best protects Turkish interests. They said the opening of the Montreux Convention to debate and the Canal Assemble project is a cause for concern. It came as the government moves forward with plans to construct a massive canal connecting the Black Sea to the Sea of Marmara. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In the U.S., Minneapolis police chief says kneeling on George Floyd's neck violated the department's restraint policy. At the murder trial, Daria Arredondo testified Derek Chauvin's conduct was against police ethics. Talking to the jury, Arredondo said Chauvin did not follow his training, which emphasized the sanctity of life. Arredondo said the use of force should have ended once Floyd stopped resisting. He added Chauvin escalated the situation even as Floyd fell unconscious.
When Mr. Floyd was no longer responsive and even motionless, to continue to apply that level of force to a person proned out, handcuffed behind their back, that in no way, shape, or form is anything that is by policy. It is not part of our training, and it is certainly not part of our ethics or our values.
The 19-year police veteran Chauvin has pleaded not guilty to charges of murder and manslaughter. And now moving on, China has reported an outbreak of African swine fever in the northwest Xinjiang region. In a statement, China's Agriculture Ministry said the outbreak occurred on a Xinjiang farm with 599 pigs. It said 33 pigs were infected while 6 of them died. It added that the remaining live pigs in the affected area have been culled. The death toll from the floods and landslides in Indonesia and East Timor has risen to over 150. Search and rescue teams say more than 70 people are still missing in Indonesia. Indonesia's disaster management agency said it had recorded 130 deaths in a cluster of remote islands near East Timor, while the local authorities have also listed another 27 as dead. The National Disaster Agency has warned of extreme weather for the next few days. A spokesperson for the agency said authorities are still working to evacuate remote communities and to provide shelter. Authorities say they are scrambling to shelter evacuees while trying to prevent any spread of COVID-19. In Russia, a weather report faced sudden interruption after a dog stole the microphone from a TV reporter in Moscow. The golden retriever jumped at Nadezhda Sereskina, grabbed her microphone and ran away. Later, Sereskina tried to interview the dog after recovering the mic from him. The video has garnered almost 500,000 views since it was published 4 days ago on the broadcaster's YouTube channel. California's famed Carlsbad flower fields are in full bloom and wowing visitors with their bright and beautiful colors. More in this report.
The flower fields near San Diego showcase more than 70 million flowers. They create an annual spectacle when the flowers bloom, drawing visitors from across California and beyond. The attraction was closed for most of 2020 due to pandemic-related restrictions.
I am so happy we're open again. You know, after last year, it was very difficult on all of us. It takes about 9 months to get to this stage. So last year we were 9 months in and we had to mow the crop down.
Luckily for this year's visitors, plummeting coronavirus cases and California's move to the orange tier from the red tier of lockdown restrictions meant the fields could once again welcome visitors.
I've never seen anything like this before. I'm from Georgia, and we have, fields of all kinds of things, but I've never really been this close to like a field of flowers. So it's really cool to be out here and see all of this. And like everything's so neat and organized and pretty. Yeah, love it.
The Carlsbad flower fields are also a working farm with the blooms ending up in florists and supermarkets. They are open to the public until 9th of May.
Shares in the Asia Pacific are trading mixed after major indexes on Wall Street surged to record closing highs overnight stateside. The Nikkei 225 in Japan slipped close to 1%, while the Topix index dipped more than 1%. South Korea's Kospi edged higher marginally. Mainland China's stock were lower, with the Shanghai Composite and the Shenzhen Component shedding close to 0.5% each. Meanwhile, Hong Kong markets will return from a 3-day holiday on Wednesday. In football, Barcelona beat Real Valladolid 1-0 in their Spanish Liga face-off. This comes as Barcelona's 6th consecutive league win. Ousmane Dembele's dramatic late winner gave Barca a huge boost in their title challenge. The French forward volleyed home from Ronald Araujo's flick on in the last minute to seal Barca's win. Valladolid showcased a disciplined yet bold performance but failed to hit the target each time. Barca are now in second place with 65 points, only one behind leaders Atletico Madrid. And in the English Premier League, West Ham United have boosted their hopes for a top 4 finish with a 3-2 win over Wolverhampton Wanderers. The win lifts West Ham to 4th place with 52 points, a point ahead of 5th place Chelsea. Jesse Lingard, Pablo Fornals and substitute Jared Bowen fired the Hammers into a 3-0 lead. Leander Dundalker, Fabio Silva pulled 2 back for the home side but failed to avert their defeat. The Wolves remain on 14th place with 35 points. Meanwhile, Crystal Palace held Everton to a 1-1 draw, further dampening Everton's hope of securing European football next season. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.